Good afternoon, everyone. I have just stepped out of a meeting with Premier Kenney and my Cabinet colleagues to announce an important decision we have just finalized. I want to share it with Albertans as soon as possible, and I appreciate you making time to participate on very short notice. I also recognize that many Albertans have important health-related questions for Dr. Hinshaw, who will be available tomorrow for an update and able to speak on the ongoing work to protect public health. Over the winter break, my department officials and I have spoken with leaders in our education system about the return to in-person learning. Like all of us, they are worried about the rapid rise of the Omicron variant and its effects on our schools. Many are concerned about potential staffing challenges. This is not limited to classroom teachers and includes other staff such as bus drivers, custodians, and educational assistants, as well as administrators and maintenance workers. Schools are expecting a high number of student absences, making it harder for teachers to manage in-person and at-home learning at the same time. And with students and staff still on holidays, it's very hard for anyone at this time to fully assess what the situation for schools may look like. School authorities have told us they need more time to prepare and to understand what the evolving COVID situation could mean for their school communities in terms of staffing and potential operational impacts. And I completely understand these concerns. And I know our education partners are going to do their very, very best, as they have throughout this entire pandemic. That is why today I am announcing that we will extend the student winter break to January 10th, province-wide, and pause the return to learning for kindergarten to grade 12 students until January 10th. And recognizing the learning disruptions this causes for older students, we are also canceling January diploma exams, which were set to begin on January 11th. School authorities will use this week to gather more information and prepare for student instruction starting on January 10th. Late next week, I will provide an update with more information on next steps. With the COVID situation rapidly evolving, so too must our response be. Our plan to pause the return to school is in line with other jurisdictions in Canada. In fact, BC made a similar announcement yesterday, and today Ontario announced a 2-day delay to accommodate additional planning for their schools. Other provinces have also announced delays to in-person learning, including Manitoba, Quebec, Nova Scotia, PEI, and Newfoundland. Here in Alberta, this pause will give school authorities the time they need to assess and consider staffing and operational impacts. And I am confident that this additional time to plan will position school authorities for a successful startup. My department will remain available to support school authorities over the weekend, and discussions are already planned with superintendents as soon as this evening. School authorities will also use the next week to prepare for changes in COVID testing, notification, and reporting of COVID cases. As Dr. Hinshaw explained before Christmas, the rapid rise in cases has led to a shift in PCR testing strategy that focuses on high-risk groups like continuing care homes and healthcare. This shift required changes to case investigation protocols. I do want to emphasize that parents can be confident that when children return to the classroom, significant public health measures will continue to keep both students and staff safe. As an additional measure, starting January 10th, we will distribute an initial 8.6 million at-home rapid tests to schools across Alberta and 16.5 million medical-grade masks for staff and for students. This will bring convenience and is an additional measure to lower risk of in-school transmission. 8.6 million rapid tests is enough to provide 2 5-test kits to every student and staff member across the entire education system. Distribution details are being finalized, and more information on both rapid tests and masks will be shared next week. As Dr. Hinshaw has often said, this is a challenging time, but we will get through this, and we will get through it together. Today's decision wasn't made lightly. While many parents are ready to send their children back to the classroom, just as many are understandably also very concerned about the rise in cases. Pausing the return to in-person learning presents new challenges both for students and for parents, particularly the parents of elementary-age students who were not anticipating an additional week of their children being home during a deep freeze and who themselves are planning to return to work. As always, I am incredibly grateful to parents, to children, to teachers and staff members in the education school system for their resilience and their flexibility. I also want to thank school authorities and education partners who shared their perspectives with me and with my department. And I look forward to collaborating with school authorities to move forward on our next steps. I know this is new information at a time when many students, families, and school staff are resting and spending time safely with family and friends. I do hope that what I am sharing today offers you some reassurance that we are in fact taking this very seriously and of course always putting the safety of our students and our staff as our #1 priority. To teachers and school staff and to school authority administrators, please know that we continue to support you and we are grateful for all that you do each and every day. Thank you, and I look forward to being able to provide more detailed information late next week.
Thank you, Minister. We are now going to move over to the Q&A portion. I ask reporters keep their questions to one question and one follow-up. Operator, can you please put through the first caller?
Thank you. The first caller is Dylan Short, Post Media.
Hi there. You just mentioned it, that this is obviously going to pose some challenges for parents that were expecting to have their kids at school next week. A lot of them will probably be planning to go back to work themselves. Are there any supports being offered to parents that may now have to take an extra week off of work?
Well, as always, the daycare centers, et cetera, are going to be open. Unfortunately, because we do not know the individual needs of parents across this province, we won't know what those supports could look like. But I know that parents have been amazing throughout this whole pandemic, knowing that we've had to be nimble, and they also want to ensure that their children are safe. So they're going to do everything possible to give our schools that added time so that we can make sure when our students come back that we have every measure that we possibly can have in place to ensure their safety and a successful startup.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah. The Premier was asked about this earlier this week. You mentioned it. Other jurisdictions have been making announcements throughout the week here. I guess, why wait until 5:30 on the Thursday, the week prior to classes starting, many going back on Monday, to make this decision?
Well, I can tell you we've been working as a department right through the holiday break, talking to our education partners, making sure that we have the most up-to-date information. As Dr. Hinshaw has indicated earlier this week, it's a very fast evolving situation with Omicron. We want to be absolutely sure when we bring our students back that we do have the staffing in place because we're not sure right now as to whether the staffing will be adversely affected by the high numbers of Omicron infections that are happening right across the province. So we absolutely want to make sure that when we bring our students back that we have everything in place to ensure that they're safe and that we're able to resume with in-person learning.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Shannon Johnston, CTV.
Hi there. When schools went on break, I believe there were 203 schools with alerts or outbreaks. Counting now obviously has been paused until January 4th. Do we have any idea at this point how many staff and student cases there are in the province right now?
Well, that's a great question to ask Dr. Hinshaw tomorrow, but from the numbers that we've been looking at, we cannot break out the number of staff members. We certainly have an idea of the number of adults. As far as our young people go, while there were 200 plus schools on alert on outbreak, at the time that we went on Christmas break, I believe there were 23 schools with active cases because, of course, students would stay and those schools would stay on alert or outbreak status for longer than the actual active cases were in place. So again, we are looking at all of the data that will be refreshed obviously as we move forward, but right now we don't have a clear line of sight on those numbers, and that's why it's so important for us to have next week so that we can actually determine the effect on the staffing, as I indicated earlier, whether it's bus drivers or educational assistants or teachers or administrators, but also on the number of students that are impacted, because right now there are many students and staff members that perhaps have taken a rapid test that haven't actually gone through a PCR testing to verify their infection. So, of course, we're going to do everything we can to get the most up-to-date information that we can before we bring our students back.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do, yeah. Just to that point, we are seeing staffing shortages in multiple industries because of COVID. How are you preparing to deal with teachers and subs out sick?
Well, again, it is the responsibility of school authorities. 98% of the funding from education goes directly to school authorities to deal with their local school realities. We know that we have roughly 90,000 staff involved in education, whether it be teachers, frontline teachers, or educational assistants, bus drivers, etc. So we will know within the first few days of returning to next week for the staff members as to what those impacts will be from a staffing level. Then obviously our schools will also have to find out where the student impact has been as well. So it is very complex. We have roughly about 730,000 students, of which 700,000 are in-person learning, roughly. Right now. So it is very complex with a lot of moving parts that we have to make sure are able to respond to the realities that we're going to face next week when everyone from a staffing perspective comes back to the classroom.
I understand there is only one more question in the queue. Operator, can you please put through our last caller?
Wyatt Sharp, The Wyatt Sharp Show.
Hi there. I'm just going to ask, you mentioned Ontario and its decision today. They announced that they would be extending, as you mentioned, the winter break by just 2 days. So I'm wondering what Alberta is going to do in kind of the time difference. Obviously, Alberta is extending it by longer than Ontario is. So can you speak a little bit about why Alberta is doing it longer than some jurisdictions, and what, furthermore, about what Alberta hopes can be accomplished by extending it longer than, for example, the province of Ontario?
Well, and I can't speak to the rationale for Ontario only extending it for 2 days, but when I look at Alberta, we have school divisions that are coming back on January 3rd, some are coming back on January 4th, some are coming back on January 5th. So to capture the vast majority of those, we decided to do the full week, simply to give us enough time to really assess the repercussions across the whole system, rather than just a small fraction of those school days. So it just gives us that additional amount of time to make sure that we have everything in place. Also, as I mentioned, we're making sure that we have the rapid tests and the masks. We want those available for students and staff members for January 10th, and that's going to give us enough time to make sure that we're able to distribute those to our school authorities as well.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, and just briefly as well, I know in Ontario, where I'm speaking to you from today, there are many parents who, even after the announcement, for example, in Ontario today, are concerned that perhaps it could be extended further than 2 days. I'm wondering if you're nervous at all that perhaps parents in Alberta might feel kind of that same sense of nervousness, I guess you could say, that perhaps schools could be, that the school closures could be extended further than 1 week, and whether or not you can make a commitment that they will not be closed further than 1 week.
Well, we're certainly going to gather all the information that we have and make the best decision possible, as we've done right through the pandemic. As I said, it's very fast evolving. My anticipation is that students will return to in-person learning on January 10th. That being said, of course, we will have to look at the impacts to staff and also to the classroom. So again, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we set the classroom, in-person learning classroom experience up for success with the additional rapid tests, with the additional masks available that we will be providing as a province. We want to make sure that we have all those in place, on top of all the layering of other additional health measures that we've had in place all along, the enhanced hand sanitization, the cleaning, et cetera. So all of those layered together will, I believe, give parents confidence to send their children back to school. But again, we cannot know what the staffing situation will be until we see what happens next week. So we have always promised that we would be nimble, and as I said, our first priority is always ensuring that our students and staff are safe. So whatever it takes to keep them safe, we will do.
So a few more callers have joined the queue. We have time for 2 more questions. Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Emily Mertz, Global News.
Thanks. I'm just wondering if any other restrictions are being considered for when students return to in-person learning, or is it just right now that you're going to close and delay the reopening?
At this point in time, these are all the restrictions or the changes that we're making to in-person learning at this point in time. PIC is ongoing. The Cabinet Committee is currently meeting, and Dr. Hinshaw will speak to other possible measures tomorrow when she comes forward for her press conference.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do. Just a quick one. Sure. We've heard of concerns of staffing shortages in other industries. I'm wondering if that was considered. Are you worried that this might have a trickle-down effect for parents that are now considering maybe having to stay home with children when they thought they'd be back in school instead of going to work?
Well, it certainly, this decision was taken very, very seriously. There was a lot of discussion around that very item. But again, we feel very strongly that we need to ensure that our schools are positioned well for success, that we have everything in place when we bring our students back to in-person learning. And right now we feel we need to add those additional measures of the rapid tests and the masks. So it is a decision that was made given all of that context, but we do recognize that it will create some challenges for certain parents and certain families, and my apologies for that. But unfortunately, Omicron has dealt us this circumstance at this point in time.
Operator, can you please put through our last caller for the day?
Alana Smith, Canadian Press.
Hi, Minister. You said that you stepped out of a meeting with Premier Jason Kenney and your cabinet colleagues earlier to make this decision, but I'm wondering, were there any other measures that were discussed during the meeting to curb growing COVID-19 cases, especially as Alberta records its highest daily case count today on record?
Well, my colleagues are still in that meeting. I left the meeting because I felt very strongly that as soon as a decision was made around schools, that we needed to communicate that to our parents so that they knew what to expect for next week. I wanted that information to be out there as quickly as possible, but my colleagues are still discussing other measures that could be used to curb or slow down the spread.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I'm wondering if you can speak just to what some of those measures that are being discussed right now in that meeting are.
I cannot speak to them, but I know that Dr. Hinshaw and our health minister, I believe, will be coming out tomorrow to speak to that. Definitely Dr. Hinshaw for sure will be speaking to them tomorrow.
Okay, that's all for today, folks.
Thank
you so much.